Good evening, everyone. I'm wishing you all a very happy Independence Day on behalf of the Modak Trainer Academy. I'm welcoming you all in our today's session. I'm Arya Mukherjee, and first of all, let me thank you all for being present here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, who is going to discuss about Independence Day. The eminent speaker of this unique topic is Dr. Radharaman Chakrabarti, Professor Radharaman Chakrabarti. Professor Radharaman Chakrabarti is currently Project Director of UNESCO supported program on international understanding for human unity at Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, Kolkata. He was conferred the distinguished Swami Vivekananda Chair Professorship in Social Sciences by the University of Calcutta. Under his presidency, the Jadavpur Association for International Relations has emerged as an academic platform for serious international studies with membership across the disciplines and professions, offering special access to the young scholars. Dr. Radharaman Chakrabarti is also member of the Peace Studies Group of Calcutta University, a topper in political science with specialization in international relations. Professor Radharaman Chakrabarti was educated at Presidency College, University of Calcutta, and the University of London. He was a Commonwealth Research Scholar at the London School of Economics from 1966 to 69, where he completed his PhD in international relations. During this period, he also attended the Hague Academy of International Law's summer school program in 1967. He was a Fulbright scholar at the University of Washington from 1978 to 79 for his postdoctoral work. Professor Chakravarti was an eminent faculty of political science at Presidency College, University of Calcutta from 1963 to 71. Subsequently, in 1971, he joined the University of Bardhaman as professor and head of the Department of Political Science and went on to be the youngest dean of the Faculty of Arts. In 1981, Professor Chakrabarti was appointed the first director of Netaji Institute of Asian Studies, an interdisciplinary research organization set up by the government of West Bengal, and that continued in that position till 1997. In 1997, the newly set up Netaji Subhas Open University, West Bengal, had him as its first vice chancellor and soon blossomed into a premier distance learning body in higher education. A delegate to numerous national and international conferences, and contributor to learned journals, the numerous publications of Professor Chakrabarti include the following major works like Intervention and the Problem of International Control, Theories and Practice of International Politics, The Political Economy of India's Foreign Policy, Ethnicity and Ethno-Nationalism, Alternative Approaches to International Relation Theories, India's External Relations in a Globalized World Economy, Sri Lanka, Government and Politics, and so on. Now I request Professor Radharaman Chakrabarti, sir, please start your deliberation.
Sir, please turn on your mic. Sir, please turn on your mic.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Are you getting a full view?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Now, a very big thank you to Professor Modak for his very generous and lengthy introduction of whatever I was able to do during all these years. But that is not very important. After all, you see, I have grown much old now, and all those achievements I have just left behind. It is better not to carry the baggage at this point of my life. So today is the 15th of August, and Dr. Gargi Day, I would request you to please give me the subheading of the title that we discussed. What is the subheading? The
We wait
subheading was
for a fulfillment.
wait for a
We'll wait.
fulfillment. Yes, that is the theme, that we wait for a fulfillment, which implies that which implies, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Which implies that there is a lot to achieve, and there were great many aspirations and expectations when we achieved independence in the year 1947. So that is the theme on which I'll try to build my ideas. Well, friends, I welcome you, and also I express my appreciation of your eagerness to listen to whatever I have to say, and my regards to seniors who are also attending. And I'm told that this is going to be a very huge audience across the different states of India. Uh, we are observing this day as the independence anniversary, and we must also admit that this freedom didn't arrive all of a sudden out of the blue. Well, there was a long history of uprisings. We start with various forms of movement, uprisings. Then we had movements. By uprisings, I refer to the Sepoy Mutiny. Then movements, many types of those movements, targeted killing by those who were well dubbed the terrorists against targeted white officials. That led to frontal, that led to frontal struggle at two levels. One was the non-violent within the nation struggle, and the other one was a clearly belligerent armed action which took place outside the boundary of our country. Now, all this is pretty well known to you. I am not going into that. That part of the story is well written also quite elaborately in different publications. The reason why I decided to appear before you is to raise a few rather fundamental issues and would like to share my views with you. And do not please take whatever I say as the last word. There could be many, deficiencies, and therefore please be prepared for a kind of an open dialogue. Now, in my understanding, why actually we were so much eager to achieve independence? One reason could be that we were almost fed up with the colonial oppression. That is the known explanation. But more important, I think that there must have been something deeper working within the minds of the people at that time. During the nearly more than 100 years of direct struggle against Western colonial rule, I think the people were preparing for a psychological change. Freedom not merely for turning the British out, but freedom also for certain other higher, goals to achieve. This is the way I would like to look at freedom. So freedom stands for some very certain aspirations. Aspirations arise from life as it rolls on. Aspirations that arise from life as it rolls on, and also the experiences that we gather in the course of this rolling of life, I would think that the long period of struggle for independence also opened up our eyes to some of the great possibilities that would lie ahead once we achieve independence. There was no doubt about it that we would certainly someday or other, not too far away, someday or other achieve independence. And what to do with that independence? That sort of question arose even during the period of independence struggle. I agreed to adopt a bilingual mode of presentation. So at certain points of time, I will be using my own mother tongue. Now here, the point that I was trying to raise is this, যে আমরা কেন দীর্ঘকাল এই যে স্বাধীনতা সংগ্রাম করলাম, তার কি একটাই মাত্র উদ্দেশ্য ছিল যে আমাদের শ্বেতাঙ্গদের শাসন থেকে মুক্তি পেতে হবে? তার বদলে শ্বেতাঙ্গদের বদলে আমাদের অন্য কৃষ্ণাঙ্গ কোনো একজন সাহেব বা আমাদের দেশের লোকই যদি এর দায়িত্ব নেয় তাহলে কি সুবিধা হতো? তা তো নয়। এই সংগ্রামটা চলাকালীন আমাদের মনে কতগুলো মৌলিক প্রশ্ন জেগেছিল যে স্বাধীনতা যখন আসবে তখন আমরা এই স্বাধীনতা দিয়ে কি করব? So that was the very first point I have raised. There were many underlying motivations for this struggle for freedom. Two things come to my mind. One is a proper conceptualization of the objectives of the struggle. And I must tell you that it didn't happen all of a sudden. The idea of the struggle itself evolved as the struggle went on. And then, as the thinking of the leaders as well as the people matured, well, they will stumbled upon certain ideas. What an independent nation is supposed to do. And you see, very enlightened and very useful ideas we were fortunate to have from a long line of serious thinkers and also persons who were not directly participating in the freedom movement, but at the same time, they were, well, internally, mentally, very much involved in the entire process. Now, I mentioned the names of certain such, thinkers. এইখানটা আমি বাংলায় বলছি কারণ অনেকগুলি লেখা বাংলায় আছে। আমি শুরু করব, you will start with Raja Rammohan Roy. Now, Raja Rammohan Roy certainly didn't advocate for, complete independence from the British rule. His idea was different, that possibly he thought that there could be some kind of a coexistence of the white, of the superior category, the white persons of the superior category, not the ordinary white persons. And a coexistence of these whites with the Indian class of excellent people, that would give rise to a new nation. That was Rammohan's idea. But at the same time, he was very, very careful to ensure that at the very beginning, the British rule should ensure that there were certain very essential, basic, fundamental rights which they were going to deny. And therefore, he protested. For example, the right of freedom of expression, the right of press, the right of women, etc., etc., all these things. So he actually started the struggle. So he was one step forward from the earlier Sepoy mutiny. There was some social purpose behind the freedom struggle. Then I will mention the great literature, আমাদের সাহিত্য সম্রাট বঙ্কিমচন্দ্র, যিনি বন্দে মাতরমের উদ্গাতা। আর তিনি শুধু সাহিত্যিক ছিলেন না, তিনি একটা মানে জাতির আসন্ন জাতির যে জন্ম হচ্ছে সেটা তিনি উপলব্ধি করতে পেরেছিলেন এবং সেই জাতির যে ভবিষ্যৎ রূপ কি হবে সে সম্বন্ধেও তিনি ভাবনা চিন্তা করেছিলেন তার সাহিত্যের মধ্যে দিয়ে। যেসব প্রবন্ধ তিনি লিখেছেন সেখানেও কিন্তু নানা বিষয়ে আলোচনা আছে, বিশেষ করে তার একটি প্রবন্ধ সাম্য আর একটা হচ্ছে বাংলার কৃষকদের নিয়ে তিনি যে গভীর চিন্তা ভাবনা করেছেন যে এই কৃষি ব্যবস্থা যা মুঘল সাম্রাজ্যের সময় থেকে চলে আসছে এবং ব্রিটিশ এসে তার কোন রকম সেরকম আমূল পরিবর্তন করেনি, যার ফলে আমাদের দেশে একটা নতুন জাত স্বজাতীয় শোষক সম্প্রদায় তৈরি হয়েছিল। Rammohan Bankim Chandra wanted to put an end to this vicious practice. বঙ্কিমচন্দ্রের সাম্য এবং কমলাকান্ত ইত্যাদি যে প্রবন্ধ এগুলো পড়া দরকার। We would also mention the contribution of our only sister, দিদি আমরা করি। I think for me there is only one sister, and that is Sister Nivedita. Sister Nivedita, although she came from England, actually from Ireland, she was keen to understand the Indian social system and wrote a few, very useful uh, works, of which I mention the Wave of Indian Life, Sister Nivedita's original contribution about the structure and functioning of the Indian society, and that includes not only the Hindu society, but also the non-Hindu Islamic and other societies as well. This work presented a viewpoint of the Hindu structure as a whole. The purpose was because Sister Nivedita was herself involved in this freedom struggle. She was an active participation in the Congress movement, and she had the express permission of her guru, Vivekananda, at the last point of his life, that she had the freedom and permission of her guru to go ahead when he would be no more. যতদিন স্বামীজি জীবিত ছিলেন ততদিন ওকে খানিকটা বন্ধনে আবদ্ধ রেখেছিলেন যে না তুমি এর বেশি এগোবেন, কিন্তু তারপরে উনি তাকে সেই অনুমতি দিয়ে গেছিলেন। and she actively participated. She knew the ins and outs of Indian national struggle. Therefore, her own idea of the Indian society was a valuable input to our understanding of future India, and also the way she painted the first likely national flag. This is something remarkable. And there she imbibed the essential cultural values of India. The whole tradition got reflected in that sketch of a flag. Then I must mention Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who was a very spiritually inclined person, but also a very dominant leader at a very important phase of the national struggle. And he contributed the idea of Swarajya. Swarajya is the Indian equivalent of freedom, which means not only just political freedom, but also a moral freedom. A moral freedom means the power to control oneself, internally. You see, when you are independent, a nation, what happens? You have so many people. Now, unless these people will adopt a certain uh, moral posture, unless these people are also ready to exercise certain restraints on their personal behavior, personal interests, etc., well, it would be very difficult to build up a nation proper. So Swarajya was the necessary qualitative supplement to the physical struggle for freedom. And why should I not also mention Subhash Chandra Bose? Well, Subhash Chandra Bose was mainly an activist, but also a very serious theoretician. If you just read his, what should I say, emotional writing, Turunesh Swapno, and also he is very realistic, and a book written in superb English, that is the Hind, sorry, uh, Subhash Chandra Bosu's Haripura. I would rather mention Haripura speech, which he delivered as the nominated president of the Indian National Congress. That speech I would consider to be, even today, the most valid blueprint for the onward development of the Indian nation at all levels: economic, political, social, and also spiritual. That is what actually frightened Gandhiji. Gandhiji was a non-radical person. His ideas were rooted in the past, and he certainly would not accept a radical view that Subhas Bose was propagating. But I would say that when I say that 15th August and there is so much to achieve, there is so much to achieve. Well, that scheme is still lying there, waiting to be realized. The other aspect that I must emphasize at this point is that apart from independence, one has also to think of the kind of nationalism that Indian nation would actually stand for. And our uh, thinkers, our creative thinkers mainly, were very, very careful about this point. There were writings from Rabindranath Tagore, his Raktokarbi, his Tashet Desh, and his numerous articles appearing in different, books and journals. Now you can find them all compiled in the series of Rabindra Rachanavali. If you read some of those books, and particularly Raktokarbi, Tashet Desh, you see that Rabindranath took his pen to emphasize the importance of individual liberty and the importance of individual initiative if a society was to remain alive. Otherwise, it will be all dead. And perhaps you will be surprised if I also mention the name of a leftist thinker, M. N. Roy. Some of you may be knowing, maybe the younger generation may not know. Some of you may be knowing that he was at the forefront of the original communist movement in Europe. He took a seat just next to Lenin. And when Lenin and the Soviet leaders were discussing about the future course of action in Asia, including China and India, well, it was the thesis presented by M.N. Roy that Lenin appreciated so much that he instructed his party men that, well, this should be the guideline for our activities in Eastern societies, including India, because they are a different kind of culture. What we did in Russia or what we were going to do in Europe may not be useful for, may not produce the kind of fruit, the kind of effects when we apply it in India. So that kind of importance he achieved. And later on, he was a very introspective man and he came back. He thought that by joining the National Congress, he would be able to push the independence movement forward. He became disillusioned. And at the same time, he also not quite very happy the way Soviet Union was being run by Stalin and his party men. Because the very essence of individuality, the very essence of personal freedom was denied. Even Tagore, at a very ripe old age, he was so, uh, what should I say, so eager, even at that age, to travel to Soviet Union and see what new order they have introduced. He was all praise. He was all praise for Soviet system. But he was very apprehensive that this system might destroy individual initiative, individuality. After all, you cannot build a society with persons who do not have any kind of initiative. So we have all these, you see, ideational inputs coming from very high stalwart thinkers in our country who may not have joined the independence movement physically speaking, but still they provided the very ideational basis of what freedom should be, how freedom should be conceived. And I would now bring in another aspiration, the yearning for democracy. We must be liberal enough, open minded enough to admit that democracy is an idea. Certainly, I mean, the modern democracy is certainly alien to our tradition. We had definitely responsible governments. Even the monarchs were very much uh, conscious of the concerns of the people. There are many instances. And in India, in the ancient India, there were also forms of government almost popularly run. But what we mean by democracy was absent at that time. So we had also developed a yearning for democracy. How and why? Because the British, apart from issue their colonial policies of exploitation and repression, they did many good things. And one of the good things was that they opened our eyes to the way democracy should be running. গণতন্ত্র বস্তুটা কি? আমাদের দেশে গণতন্ত্র বলতে যা বোঝানো হতো আগের দিনে সেটা অন্য ধরনের শাসন ব্যবস্থা। সেখানে রাজতন্ত্র ছিল, সেখানে মন্ত্রীতন্ত্র ছিল, সেখানে পুরোহিততন্ত্র ছিল, কিন্তু সেখানে যারাই শাসন করুন না কেন তাদের প্রজাদের প্রতি একটা দায়বদ্ধতা তারা সবসময় স্বীকার করেছেন এবং অনেক ক্ষেত্রে তারা প্রজাদের হিত সাধনকে মনে করতেন রাজার একমাত্র ধর্ম। সেসব ঠিকই আছে, কিন্তু আধুনিক যুগে গণতন্ত্র বলতে যা বোঝায়, যে গণতন্ত্রে আজকে পৃথিবীর উন্নত দেশগুলো এত বেশি অগ্রগতি লাভ করেছে এবং আমাদের দেশে যারা চিন্তাবিদ, আমি অমর্ত্য সেনের কথা বিশেষ করে বলবো এক্ষেত্রে, আরো অনেকেই বলেছেন যে এই গণতন্ত্রের যে মূল কাঠামো সেটা যত বেশি জোরদার হবে, সামাজিক ন্যায় বিচার তত বেশি সম্ভব এবং যে সে দেশের অগ্রগতি তত বেশি দ্রুত হবে যত বেশি গণতান্ত্রিক অধিকার সাধারণ মানুষ ভোগ করবে। সংক্ষেপে কথাগুলো বললাম, কিন্তু গণতন্ত্রকে পেতে গেলে পরে যে প্রয়াস দরকার সেই প্রয়াসটা কিন্তু করতে হবে কাদের? Here I come to the next point of my discourse, which is about the two instruments. The two instruments for bringing about the projected transformation of the Indian society through democracy. On the one hand, we have the people, the human resources, and on the other, we have the state apparatus. These two forces acting together, acting in some kind of harmony with a kind of very powerful interface, well, that would definitely uh, ensure a proper implementation of democracy. And added to that, we are required to be careful that this democracy is not a replica of democracy which is operating elsewhere. You see, the forms of government are actually conditioned by the basic local situation and the basic local past. So, what is good for America or for Britain or for France? Well, definitely, they have very superior type of democracy. England is the mother of parliamentary democracy. That is admitted. Even then, India being a different kind of a society with a high tradition, a very cultural legacy left for the people, and with the rich experience of at least three different types of foreign people coming here and ruling us. So with that rich experience, we have to devise our own type of democracy that is rooted in Indian condition. So, just because we have declared in the preamble of our constitution that India is a republic, is a democracy, that is not enough. Because we, the people of India, have given unto ourselves this constitution. So, it is therefore the duty of us, that means the people, to make sure that we have Indian type of democracy. And not that this is not happening. This is happening over these 77 years. Different governments under different party rule have attempted to give an Indian shape to our democracy. I am not denying them their credit, but the role that the people should have played in the process, I do not find in recent history. The fault lies on both sides. The people were a bit, indifferent, rather lazy, and they still happen to be satisfied if the work is handed over to their representatives, as if the representatives would do much better than what they would otherwise be able to. And this is a very wrong way of looking at things. What happened as a result of this over dependence of people on our representatives, the representatives became lords in their own right. They thought they are the boss and they can dictate terms to the people. The only time they come to the people is the election time. Otherwise, they hardly care for the population. But it is the people who have given unto themselves the constitution, not the elected representative, not the minister, not the president of India. They are products of the constitution. And we forget that. This is a very important aspect that the people in India, up to this point of time, up to, I mean, the present time, have not given serious thought to. They think that depending on the government is the only way. And I'll give you one or two instances now. I want actual involvement of the people. Otherwise, it cannot be called a people's government. Otherwise, it cannot be called a democracy. And I want the state to be, prepared enough to assist the people so that they can build up their own idea of a democratic life. Where is that initiative? Where is that initiative? I give you the example of, uh, I'm trying to shorten my speech. I have already taken half an hour, more than the time thought I would take.
No, you can take time, sir.
Just
Enough time.
5, 8 minutes, huh? Okay, and I'll
Okay.
finish. Now, I'm just trying to give some examples where people were lacking and people failed to perform their duties and obligations. This is about, you see, the preservation of independence. This is the first and foremost duty of every independent society, to preserve the independence that was won at such a great cost. We, the people of India, think that this is the job of the defense department of the government. The military forces, definitely we must salute them. It is for them that we live here in peace. But we think that, well, protecting the country is entirely the responsibility of government in its defense department. It's not a task of the military. Are we not here to support the military system? What is the example that we see in the Western countries? Even the civilian population, even the women, girls, they join. What is happening in Ukraine? Don't you see? Don't we see that even young women, they are joining the forces with whatever capacity or skill they have? But us, we people, we think that we can join the army when we have no other job. But what about the learned people? What about the elite people? Don't they have any kind of responsibility? This is lacking. Anyway, the government has been doing the best that it could, and we had to pass through several points of crisis. 1948, the aggression in Kashmir. Then 1962, the wanton aggression, shameless aggression by our neighbor on the north, China. Our first deep-seated friendship was developed with China. We were so generous. Our prime minister, first prime minister, well, introduced China to the world. And in this country, for no reason, they attacked us mercilessly when we were really not prepared for any kind of war. And Nehru died broken-hearted. This is what we got. I will never forget this. Our first enemy was China. Why did they have to wage a war against us? Did we do any harm to them? Nothing. That point. Then in 1965, there was some change. People then really understood that the crisis is there. So when the slogan was mouthed by the then very respectable Prime Minister, successor of Nehru, Lal Bahadur Shastri, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. What did he mean? That this is people's war. This land belongs to the people, not to Lal Bahadur Shastri or any other high official. The people have to defend the country. And the people did. 1965 was really a victory, unless Soviet Union intervened. It was at their instant that, well, the Ayub Khan of Pakistan, well, met Lal Bahadur Ji in Soviet Union, and he died in mysterious circumstances. But we did win the war, I tell you. Then came 1960 or 71. We did something impossible to do, liberating a part of Pakistan, which is Bangladesh today. And we thought that we would buy the real friendship of the Bangladeshi people. For some time, this was realized. But now, we are doubtful of the utility of their being a Bangladesh. So all these crises have been handled by governments in different times. I am not, giving any special credit to any particular government, but I must say that preparedness on this very aspect of preparedness, military preparedness to defend the country, I would give more marks to the present BJP government. Because this is the first time that serious action has been taken to build, hillside roads, tunnels, to reach military supplies to places which were simply inaccessible. এই যে দায়িত্বগুলো এই যে বিভিন্ন সরকার বিভিন্ন সময় যে পালন করেছেন তার জন্য তাদেরকে আমি বাহবা দেব। তবে হ্যাঁ, একটু বেশি বাহবা দেব বর্তমান সরকারকে, কারণ এই প্রথম তারা প্রমাণ করলো যে আর আমরা কিন্তু চীনের ভয় ভীত নই। পাকিস্তান যা খুশি করে যাবে আমরা সেটা সহ্য করতে প্রস্তুত নই, এবং বালাকোট এবং গালওয়ান ইত্যাদি জায়গায় সেটা আমরা প্রমাণ দিয়েছি। তবে হ্যাঁ, আমরা একটা বিরাট রকমের সংগ্রাম করিনি, কারণ ওটা আমাদের দরকার নেই। ওদেরকে খালি বুঝিয়ে দেওয়া যে ইন্ডিয়া অফ 2019-20 ওই সময় যুদ্ধগুলো হয়েছিল গালওয়ান এবং বালাকোটে। ইন্ডিয়া অফ দোজ ইয়ার্স ইজ completely different from India of 1962 or 1948. এই ভারতবর্ষ সম্পূর্ণ আলাদা, এর নেতৃত্ব তো আলাদা, এর মানুষের মন পরিবর্তন হয়ে গিয়েছে। এ দেশের মানুষ যে পার্টিই করুক না কারো অন্তত খুশি হয় যখন আমরা শত্রুকে তার উপযুক্ত শাস্তি দিতে পারি। এটুকু আমি বাংলায় বলতে বাধ্য হলাম, কারণ এখানে জাতীয়তার প্রশ্ন। এই যে আই ওয়াজ টকিং অ্যাবাউট ন্যাশনালিজম, ন্যাশনালিজম মিনস টোটাল ইনভলভমেন্ট, total identification of an individual with the collective whole. That is nationalism. ইউরোপিয়ান ন্যাশনালিজমকে রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর সমালোচনা করেছেন ইউরোপে গিয়ে, টোকিওতে গিয়ে, আমেরিকায় গিয়ে, যে তোমরা যে জাতীয়তাবাদ প্রচার করছো এই জাতীয়তাবাদের মধ্যে দুটি মারাত্মক জিনিস। একটা হচ্ছে রাষ্ট্রকে ক্ষমতা দেওয়া, যুদ্ধের নাম করে রাষ্ট্র যে কোনো দেশ আক্রমণ করবে, যা খুশি করবে, তার বিরুদ্ধে কিছু বলা যাবে না। এবং তোমরা কি জন্য করছো, তোমাদের যে কি বলবো মেকানিক্যাল সিভিলাইজেশন, ইন্ডাস্ট্রিয়াল সিভিলাইজেশন, তার প্রোডাক্ট গুলোকে রক্ষা করার জন্য তোমরা ন্যাশনালিজমটা শিখিয়েছো। আমরা ওই ন্যাশনালিজমে বিশ্বাস করি না। আমরা and the actual definition of nationalism came from Swami Vivekananda. He said that nationalism means patriotism, preparedness, your readiness to die for the country. উনি নিজে বলেছিলেন যে দেখ, আমি কিন্তু যুদ্ধে নামছি না স্বাধীনতা সংগ্রামে, কিন্তু আমি সবসময় তাদের সঙ্গে রয়েছি এবং আমি চাইছি, লন্ডনে এটা বলছেন, যে আমার বুকে একটা অন্তত ব্রিটিশের বুলেট বিঁধুক। এটা তার ভাই মহেন্দ্র দত্ত মহাশয় তিনি বলছেন যে এটা যেহেতু স্বামীজি লন্ডনে সবাই বলছেন যে একটা লাগাক, একটা বুলেট আমার বুকে লাগুক, দেখবি কি আগুন জ্বলে যাবে। মোটামুটি অতটা না হলেও দেশের মানুষ কিন্তু এখন দেশের এই যে দেশের নিরাপত্তা এবং আমাদের শত্রু কারা তার চিনতে আর এখন অসুবিধা হচ্ছে না। খুব দুঃখ লাগে এই প্রসঙ্গে, এটা যদিও অপ্রাসঙ্গিক মনে হতে পারে, আমি বলতে বাধ্য হচ্ছি। কেন আমাদের দেশের অপোজিশন এই প্রশ্ন তুললো যখন গালওয়ান এবং বালাকোট হচ্ছিল? তারা আমাদের সৈন্যবাহিনীর যে বীরত্ব শৌর্যের প্রতি সন্দেহ প্রকাশ করলেন। তারা এমন কথা বললেন প্রাইম মিনিস্টারকে লক্ষ্য করে যে আপনি কি গিয়ে কতগুলো মৃতদেহ ওখানে পড়ে আছে দেখে এসছেন, যে আপনি বলছেন যে এতগুলো মারা গিয়েছে? এই প্রশ্ন তোলা যায়? কোন সভ্য দেশে যখন যুদ্ধ হয়, আক্রান্ত দেশ, তারা কি কখনো এরকম প্রশ্ন, তাদের অপোজিশন যতই সরকার বিরোধী হয়, এরকম প্রশ্ন কেউ তোলে না। আমি কিন্তু এখানে আই উইল অ্যাকিউজ দি অপোজিশন, সে যাদেরই অপোজিশন হোক, বাম দক্ষিণ কেন্দ্রীয় যা খুশি হোক, অপোজিশনের কিন্তু একটা মস্ত বড় রেসপন্সিবিলিটি আছে টু রিয়েলাইজ দি আইডিয়াল অফ ডেমোক্রেসি। তাদের রেসপন্সিবিলিটি দে মাস্ট আইদার ফুলফিল অর দে মাস্ট কুইট। One has to be ruthless. কতগুলো ব্যাপারে ডেমোক্রেসি যেমন is a soft type of government, it depends on discussion and deliberation, but at times the leader, the national leader has to be has to adopt a very stern attitude when something happens against the interests of the nation. So I must change my course now and now come back to uh, one other point, and that will be my last point of discussion. You see, my dear friends and also respected listeners, that India heritage, cultural heritage, is known all over the world. And we certainly must be very careful about cultural imperialism. Not that we will be against adopting any kind of Western values or Western practices. It doesn't matter whether we wear jeans. It doesn't matter whether we eat Chinese food. But the point is that our own tradition, our own legacy, our own heritage, well, that must be well appreciated and practiced. This cultural independence is very important. And I am really very impressed that the present government is trying to change certain habits, not just names of certain places. Doesn't matter. If the names remain, that would not make very great change. But you see, the rotten British type of rules and regulations. Why should we follow that? And there are many practices that the British left and we copied them. There is no point. We are an independent people. So whatever we do now, we do as Indians. We must take pride in being Indian. And I'm unfortunate to note that, well, there are certain elements in our society, they think they are un-Indian people. And they are educated, highly educated people. They think they are cosmopolitan. Can you be really cosmopolitan without being a successful British, American, Spanish, Russian? Ask anybody of those countries. Would you feel more proud as a Russian or as an Italian than a cosmopolitan? They will certainly know I am an American first, I am a Russian first, and then other things will follow. Sri Aurobindo, I mentioned his name earlier, and he wrote a book, The Ideal of Human Unity. There he says that, well, cosmopolitanism is an ideal that is good for humanity as a whole, for freedom, not only for freedom, but also for, prosperity. After all, we are all human beings, not only in appearance, but also in thinking and also in our potential. If it is a matter of space travel, if it's a matter of, well, landing on the moon, any kind of, very, energetic things, well, we do have to collaborate. We do have to think as world citizens. And there is the United Nations, there are other international bodies who are, well, trying to change the habit of the nation states so that the incidence of war is controlled. So at that level, we should be cosmopolitan. But when our country is concerned, the national interest should be supreme. And last of all, I mention all these, examples not out of my head. There is a certain chapter in our sacred constitution, which is the Bible of the nation, as the Prime Minister says, or the Bhagavad Gita of the nation. That chapter was included by none other than Mrs. Indira Gandhi when she, well, modified a large part of the constitution, and a new chapter was closed that is on the fundamental duties of the citizen. That was the first time that duties were included in the constitution as a statutory obligation, not merely for the ordinary people, not merely for the citizen, but for every public functionary, including the President of India, ministers, and everyone. Nobody discusses this chapter, but this is obligatory. This is obligatory. And one element there are 10 fundamental duties. One element is there that we should also try to be a modern nation. And in keeping with the demands of the time, we should develop a scientific temperament. We should try to, well, devise, well, technical equipments which would enable us to produce more at lesser cost. And we can venture into many other areas if we really develop an advanced technology. And that we have done, that we are doing at the moment. The present century, 21st century, already some 20 years gone. India is now recognized as a capable nation. Not only politically, economy, but technologically very capable nation. We are only one of the 6 nations who have got the authority of the United Nations Law of the Sea Conference. That Oriental country is the only capable nation who can, well, examine what is there underneath the ocean bed. সমুদ্রের নিচে যে সমুদ্রকে রত্নাকর বলা হয়, সমুদ্রের নিচে যে অসম্ভব যে সম্পদ রয়েছে, খনিজ এবং অন্যান্য সম্পদ রয়েছে, সেই সম্পদগুলো তো সমুদ্রের কতশো মাইল নিচে আছে। তার তলায় সমুদ্রের যে বেড বা মৃত্তিকা ভূমি, তারও নিচে যেতে হবে। সেই যে টেকনোলজি, সেটা কিন্তু ইন্ডিয়া আয়ত্ত করেছে এতদিন। আমাদের স্যাটেলাইট থেকে আমরা সনিক মানে একটা শব্দ তরঙ্গ পাঠিয়ে আমরা দেখছি এইখানটা কপার আছে, ওইখানটা তেল আছে। আমাদের ভারতবর্ষের চারপাশে এখন অনেক সম্পদ সমুদ্রের নিচে, এবং আমরা যদি সত্যিকারের একত্র হয়ে আমাদের যা কিছু প্রতিভা এবং যা কিছু সম্পদ আছে, রিসোর্স আছে, সেগুলো সব একত্র করে যদি এইখানে এগোই, তাহলে ভারতবর্ষের ভবিষ্যতের যে উজ্জ্বল একটা রয়েছে সম্ভাবনা, সেটা কেউ আটকাতে পারবে না। হ্যাঁ, দেশের মধ্যে অনেক শত্রু এখন তৈরি হয়েছে, সেগুলোকে ধ্বংস করার দায়িত্ব সরকারের যেমন, তেমনি আমরা যদি সত্যিকারে নিজেদেরকে ভারতীয় মনে করি, আমাদেরও কিছু কিছু সামান্য কর্তব্য আছে। I think I have come to the end of my discussion, and this was a very, rough and ready presentation. I did not want to be pedantic. আমার পরিচয় দিয়েছেন, আমি না একটা বড় পণ্ডিত কিছু, ওসব ছেড়ে দিন। দেখুন, সোজা কথা সোজা ভাষায় বলাই ভালো। আমার দেশ, আমি তাকে ভালোবাসি কিনা, এটা হচ্ছে আমি প্রথমে ভাবতে হবে। যদি ভালোবাসি, আমি তার জন্য কি করতে প্রস্তুত, সেটা ঠিক করতে হবে, সেটা আমাকে করতে হবে, করে দেখাতে হবে। আমার যা গুণাপনা, আমি তো আর মস্ত বড় রেসলার হব না, কিন্তু আমি যেটা হতে পারবো সেটা আমি কেন দেবো না দেশকে? আমি তো দেশ থেকে তো কত কি পাচ্ছি, কেমন? এই এই চেতনাটুকু যদি থাকে, তাহলে আই ক্যান বি এ গুড সিটিজেন। আর যে দেশে গুড সিটিজেন থাকে, সে দেশের ভবিষ্যৎ নিয়ে ভাববার কোনো প্রয়োজন। আপনাদের সকলকে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি, আমার কথা এতক্ষণ ধরে শুনলেন। এমন কিছু দামি কথা আমি বলেছি বলে আমি মনে করি না, কিন্তু যেগুলো দরকারি আজকের দিনে মনে করা, সেটা শুধু দুঃখ হয় কি জানেন, কবে এই কথা বলছি, যেদিন সকাল থেকে খবর শুনছি যে আমরা গণতন্ত্রকে ধ্বংস করার জন্য একটা বিকল্প শক্তি তৈরি করছি এই রাজ্যে।